Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Beyond with Liz. I am here with a special guest. Can't even get it off. I am so happy to be here with my attorney, Kumbi. And I always let my guests introduce themselves because I feel like you guys are so much better at it than me. So let the audience know a little bit more about you and all of that good stuff, Kumbi.
Hi, I'm Kumbi, and it is an honor to be here. I'm blushing really badly, but I am a business attorney based in New York. I support creatives and passion field professionals in, keeping them legally set. I am also a serial launcher. I am one of those people that's super passionate about taking the leap and just launching that ish. And I am Liz's attorney, and I love that. We support creatives and wedding professionals in being legally set all the time. And I'm excited to be here.
Yay! So Kumbi and I met way back in the day. Like this is I feel like it was like 2016, 2017.
Yes, I say 2016, you say 2017, but I feel like no, because we met before we met, like
Mm-hmm.
physically. So it
Yes.
was definitely 2016. I'm actually sticking to that.
Yes, absolutely. So we've been on this journey together, and
Hmm.
Kumbi has seen my business at every stage. She has been there when I've thought about, firing clients or had difficult clients.
Yes.
She has been there through COVID to get my contract together. And I feel like these conversations are so important as business owners. Like, we cannot take our contract lightly, especially in today's world where chargebacks are a thing and they're becoming more
Mm.
and more relevant in our industry. And so, Kumbi, I would love for you to just kind of expand upon like the basics of some of the things you feel like photographers have to have in their contract to just to make sure that they're safeguarded.
Oh my God. So with photographers, I feel like a lot of things revolve around specificity. Like a lot of like making sure that your boundaries are properly specified, but not even just your boundaries, your processes and like the things that are really important, especially since photographers are creators. And with creators, a lot of your stuff revolves around not just your time, not just the process, but after that, like the actual intellectual property of the work that you've created. So I find that beyond any other creator in this industry, photographers and videographers, people that handle content, and that's where the value is. All of your protections are going to revolve around that. So making sure that it's clear what your services look like, making sure that you're not over promising, you're not under promising. It's clear in your document what I'm providing. Otherwise, people are going to ask you stupid questions like, oh, okay, but I thought this was also included. I thought you were going to stay till the end, even though I paid for 5 hours of service. I thought you were going to take pictures of this. I want to see the raw files. Like so many things revolve around what you put in simple, something as basic as your scope of work. So
Mm.
making sure that that's clear, making sure that the event date, the event time, I'm going down to the basics here. Then
Okay.
even like, I think not to just ramble on, but like the photographer is one of the biggest things, the way you create. So making sure like something that people forget is an artistic license clause. Like saying that you've seen my work. I don't want to hear shit if you do not like what comes out of it because you've hired me based on the work that you've seen. We've seen things like Sepia Gate on TikTok where
Yeah.
people, well, all of a sudden it was like a big deal that she didn't like how the
Edited it.
tone, even though that's literally in the similarity. Be clear about what you're offering. Things like engagement shoots, do they come with your booking or is it something that's going to be paid separately? How is that going to be governed? And then down to things like your compensation. When do you get paid? How much do you get paid up front as a retainer to be able to reserve that date and ensure that you're not taking another booking on that day, right? And then how do you get paid even before the event? What does the timeline look like? Like, I find that clients have become so nitpicky, and it's really important that the photographer is also nitpicky. And then, of course, the biggest thing, intellectual property, which I can talk about forever here because that is the most contested aspect of a photographer's contract.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So much and so true.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
honestly feel like the artistry license is something that needs to be talked about more because I'm going to be completely honest, guys. I didn't even know what it was until Kumbi and I sat down and talked about it. I had no idea that this was something that needed to be included. So I was just out here saying, you saw my work, and what you get is what you're going to get. It's going to look exactly like my website, but not realizing that I wasn't protected when it came to my clients and saying, like, I do have the right to be able to make your images, in my
Mhm.
artistry. That's literally what you're paying me for. But
Mhm.
in today's world where, you know, just things can become a lot of gray area. I think
Mhm.
really important to be able to have that in your contract and really speak to that. And then
Mhm.
also being able to talk about, raw files and being able to say you have, the license to be able to give
Mhm.
as many images as possible, or, because we don't have a set amount of images that we give. We give a range of how much we give per hour.
Okay. Mhm.
Just because that allows us to be able to
It gives you
say,
that buffer. Mhm.
it gives us that buffer, because sometimes I don't want to be stuck to giving you 1,000 images, and
I like that.
I don't have 1,000 images to give you if I was only there for 2 hours, you know?
Mhm. I like that. And you know what's so funny? Even as an attorney, I didn't even like automatically think that, but I think that's a brilliant idea. Like, because when I got married, it was a fixed amount of images, and a fixed amount of images were given. And I'm sure like it was a struggle to even, curate to that aspect. But like also just giving a range is probably something that will be on the safe side. Another thing people don't talk about is the non-guarantee clause. Basically, I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to take pictures of every single one of your guests. I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to take certain pictures or whatever, because people are getting very, very specific.
Yes,
So
yes,
if that is a conversation that you want to have, if that specificity means money, specificity means negotiating, and so specificity also means having these conversations before the contract is materialized. So I
yeah,
think definitely those two clauses, like the artistic license, even an editing clause,
yeah,
speaking on okay how you edit, how many edits you will do, revisions, because people be like I
yeah.
said,
It's
people are evolving.
They're definitely evolving, and what they care a lot more about the details in the photos than they used to.
Mhm.
Just because when it comes to social media, I feel like things have just changed. Technology has changed, and the consumer is a lot smarter than they were. And when it comes to this category, being able to download Canva and anybody using it is different than when it was just, Photoshop. And
Uh,
so I think being able to say that I have license over how it's edited or how many times is really, really important for what we do. And I just want to go back quickly with one thing that you said about the amount of time that you were there, because I also think being able to specify in your contract, and Kumbi did this for me too, that if there are overages, this is the agreed amount per hour that I'm going to charge you for myself, and if there's a second photographer, two different fees
hmm
for us to stay. And I
yeah.
think a lot of times I feel like with us, we're just giving that time away. I mean, always within reason, because we always give our clients more than what is contracted. But
hmm
I like to have that in place. Like have a wedding in my mind where it ran behind like a few hours. And
Oh
like
wow.
I was adamant that like this is going to run behind from the beginning. And
hmm
so they didn't want to add time in the beginning, and I let them know like, hey, my contract says if this runs over, it's going to be more expensive on the back end. So I'm the type of person, just because this is somebody's wedding and I'm not just going to walk away because I'm not being paid. I'm going to take the images and then you're going to pay me for the images. And so that's the way that I went about it.
Like that.
Yeah,
That's
because
definitely
oh,
no, yeah. So you have a wedding in mind in which you went, and when you said it went long, and so you were able to like bridge
yeah,
that. Hmm
because it's important to be able to have those contractual things to protect yourself, because at the
hmm
end of the day, even though it was a difficult client, this is still your wedding. Like, I still believe in what I'm doing, and I understand that these memories, you only get them once, and you may I don't have another a shot if I walk away from it. But at the same time, I need to be paid for
Yeah.
my time. And so now I have a way of being able to say, hey, I have these images. It was 3 hours extra coverage for this portion of the wedding, which you like it or not. And if
hmm
they say no, then it lives on a hard drive. And then if they say yes, they pay for it. And I feel like
Love that.
that for me, and being able to have that clause added to my contract really allowed me to be able to do that, because majority of the time I could have just walked away and it was what it was, and they could just be angry. But now they have another opportunity when the dust settles to be able to say, you know what, we really do want the cake
Those
cutting, we
images.
really do want those things, like those things are important to us.
Yeah, I love that. I think that to me gives a very luxury feel. And when you're hiring someone, and by luxury I mean convenience. In where it's like, okay, at least the client then even gets the offering because this person's gone above and beyond for a fee, but is able to offer those images if the need comes.
Yeah. I've only had to
Yeah.
do that once, but I was glad that it was in my contract. And
No, I agree. Sorry to speak on that. I think just to agree with you here, it's really important that you establish what your additional services and what your additional price is. You don't want to leave that to like like to back and forth or to like conflict. Let it be already like very clear what it's going to cost per hour for additional services for the different tiers of staff so that it's even something, it makes it harder for it to be contested if a conflict arises. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm not to be a Debbie Downer, there's been a lot of conflicts.
yeah, there has
Mhm.
over the last, I feel like since
Two
COVID.
years.
Yeah.
2 years since it's not COVID. So it is COVID, but it's not COVID. It's COVID. So COVID happened. Everybody went down because now everybody was like broke. And everybody was desperate and was booking all these things, like just to make sure that they were making up for their cash flow, right? So 2022 came, and 2022's wedding boom was significant. And so there's that where it's like there was a diet, like so many weddings, so many things, but then it also really empowered the client into like a whole field. Like now I'm the person that it's a client's world now. I have the choice. There's so much happening. And so that has just set people into this long journey into like very I keep saying evolved because that's the most polite way that I can say it. But people have evolved a lot. Like clients have evolved a lot. And with that evolution also comes a certain empowerment that leads to a lot of disrespect.
Yeah.
And that disrespect will lead to a lot of conflicts. And that conflict will lead to a lot of money discussions. So chargebacks, whether it's chargebacks or whether it's litigation. I don't know who on TikTok is teaching these people how to do their really quick claims in court because now everybody is a law and order student and
Yeah.
they're all going to court to try and fight even the tiniest of payments. So it's just something to be prepared about.
What is it called? Law TikTok? That's where
Law talk.
Law
It's
Talk.
called Law Talk, and Law
Yeah.
Talk is busy and
It's
very popular for a
it's
reason.
busy, but I think that is why all of this is really important. And even
Mhm,
inside of your business, outside of contracts, of
mhm,
why having a trail of your processes so that you can
mhm,
say, I communicated this, and being able to protect yourself on the back end.
mhm,
And I really feel that, yeah, things are definitely changing. Like over the last 2 seasons, I called Kumbi, like I was wondering if a client after they booked was a good fit for me, and like what
mhm,
are my rights, like what can I do, how like should I part ways, like what are my
mhm,
options. And I'm very thankful to be able to have someone on retainer to have those, to answer those questions. And so for those of you that don't, this is why your contract from the beginning needs to think about all of these different scenarios to really protect yourself. Like, what
mhm,
happens if I need to walk away? What happens if a client is abusive towards me in terms of language or emails or aggressive? Like what are my rights there? Like, can I send a warning email? Like, what does that look like? There's just so many nuances when running this business. That you need to really think about. And so the biggest one that I want to talk about that you kind of said, Kumbi, was the exclusivity when it comes to what that looks like and who owns the images and who has the rights to post the images on social. Because for me and my clients, that is the one thing they're always trying to remove from my
mhm.
contract. They don't want their images on social, but like what does that normally look like for photographers and like drafting that clause so they have the right to do what they want for those images?
Okay, so it's two different things here. Exclusivity could mean two different things in a contract. Exclusivity, first of all, there should be an exclusivity clause in your contract regarding you being the exclusive photographer at the event.
Yeah.
So an exclusivity clause would typically speak on, like for Elizabeth now, Elizabeth Austin Photography is the exclusive photographer at this event. And the reason why that's even really important now is because there are different tiers of content creators, like the videographer. But then there might be, if you've been to a Nigerian wedding, you know that sometimes there might be 5 different photographers hired, from the mother of the bride to the mother of the groom, like different things. So it gets really elaborate. But that exclusivity has to be properly documented. Now, with exclusivity in terms of like, publishing, a publishing clause in any way or a model release in your contract stating that the client is giving you the right to be able to use those images in your marketing portfolio, on your website, in your social media, um, and that's giving them, like, is consenting to the license of their, like, face, like using their images, or like not just using the images, because at the end of the day, the client does have rights. Sorry, the photographer has rights to the images, right? They are the photographer's images. But what you're doing with a model release clause is requesting, like, it's basically letting them know that they're authorizing your use of those images in their marketing portfolio, in their social media, and that they have no problem with that. With a lot of high net worth, or even maybe not in a high net worth, but with clients who maybe value their privacy in a different way, they might come back and hit you on that. I will find that a lot of photographers find that that's one of the clauses that clients will push back on a lot.
Yeah.
And with that, what they typically would say is, okay, so what does this mean? I don't want my imagery. I don't want my face. I don't want my guest's face. Like, we are private people. We don't want that in there. In certain cases, then you negotiate that clause. And you're like, okay, hey, how about decor? How about design? Or how about stuff where faces aren't really showing and it's just back, well, the word I have to use is back shots of, of the pictures.
Yes.
My bad.
From
So like,
behind.
yeah, sorry. But like, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
behind. And so using those imagery and then negotiating that and maybe editing the clause. In certain cases, I know that a lot of luxury, ultra luxury, high net worth individuals will even negotiate that, and it's like, okay, we're paying this additional amount.
Yeah.
In certain places, some photographers already like add that as a convenience in their contracts, in which it's like, okay, it's easy, I'm just going to remove it. And some people might say that that is for an additional fee of X, and
Yeah.
then they will remove it. Whatever your choice, that's your choice. Another thing is then saying, like, okay, we want to scrap that clause completely. We want to remove that and say that that's not going to appear in any of your marketing portfolio. I do not want any evidence of this event out there. And then you let them know that that's for an additional charge, because at the end of the day, you are the owner of those images.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really feel like that is, like, for me, especially doing high net worth individuals,
Hmm.
that is
Hmm.
the number one thing they
Hmm.
don't
That
want.
they will strike real quick. They will
They will
come back fast.
strike really, really quick. And I think
Hmm.
I agree with charging an extra fee for exclusivity. And I want to say that very plainly. I built that fee for me into my pricing because
Hmm.
majority of the time I'm about 50% where I can't show my work. And
Hmm.
one of the things that you all will realize as you continue to move forward in your career, real luxury isn't on social. They don't want
Hmm.
to be on social. They don't want you to see their faces.
Hmm.
They don't want any of that. So, um, that is a big portion of what I do. Like, there's events where it's $1 million and y'all will never see it. And
Hmm.
with me kind of living in that world and knowing that these conversations coming up, I use it as a way to negotiate, to say that this is already a part of what I do because privacy matters to that client. But I will say that if you are in a position where a client is asking for exclusivity, it needs to be a conversation, it needs to be a negotiation, and there needs to be some value exchange there, because that is how you make your money, is being that is how you,
Your visual,
yeah, and
like,
that is how
you
you
are the
make
visual.
your by the visual. So it's really important that you're compensated for the fact that you own your copyright and they don't want you to show it. So that needs to be paid for.
I agree, and I think that it could be communicated in different ways. Like, if you're going to put it in there as an additional, like, a lot of photographers have tiered pricing, right? Like, in certain cases, you give like your lovely. I don't know what the names are. I'm just coming up with random things, but like, you would have different tiers, in which it's like, okay, this is what this offering is. This is what this offering is. This is what this offering is. So I don't think that that stops you from being able to tier your pricing in the event of like this kind of thing as well, like a negotiated thing. I've even seen it in somebody's contract where it's like privacy and then it's like its own thing. At the same time, depending on how you quote, like how photographers quote, for instance, does the person, like, for instance, if you are one of those people where the people that are looking to get married communicate what their plan is, and then you give a quote, you're able to maybe even gauge at that point and then give the quote with that consideration in there. It's up to you, but I do think that it is of value, and
Yeah.
so that value should be communicated at some point.
Yes, it is. And I feel like that is something that needs to be talked more about. I don't want you to be
Hmm.
afraid to not take the wedding because you can't post it. Like there's a whole network of people that are there that you can network with, that now you have a different pool of clients that you wouldn't have had previously. And I
Mhm.
really say that because there was a wedding, I'm vividly remembering this, and I could at least say where they worked. It was in DC. She worked in the White House. And you know, when you have those type of weddings with political people, they don't want anything on online. And so I did that wedding, and I did like 4 of her friends' weddings after that. And so I just want to say to you, none of those were on social media. You'll never see them, but they were all good money. And my team did really, really well. And I feel like don't be afraid of that. Like we
Mhm.
see a lot of conversations of no, just walk away. And it's like, no, this is
Don't
a
do
whole
that.
there's a
Mhm.
whole group of people that are not on social. They will lurk. They may have an account that's with 100 people because they
Finsta.
yeah, but they don't post publicly, and I feel like that is really, really important to highlight here.
I agree. But like with rescheduling and cancellation, just make sure that it's properly documented. I'm seeing a lot of photographer agreements where maybe one of them is left off the conversation. Like maybe the postponement is usually the postponement one,
Yes.
and that is a problem for like for any vendor, in my opinion, because it's like, okay, your inability to be there on that day is costing me money for another day. Do you know what I mean? So it has to be properly documented what the process of rescheduling is. Can that person call you 1 week before the wedding and it's fine, or can they call? Do they have to call you 60 days before or 90 days before without it being an additional charge? Or if it is an additional charge, you need to properly communicate that, because people are getting feisty. Literally back to back, one of the conversations I'm having is about rescheduling or about changes in scope, about things like that, where it's like, okay, well, you've changed this, so now I hate you and you're like trying to take advantage of me.
Yeah.
I literally had a wedding planner call me like at 8 p.m. last night because something like that, where it's like, okay, well, I don't like this anymore, so you need to speak to my lawyer. These are the things that you have to start being mindful of,
Yeah.
because like it's just happening. And so maybe just properly documenting what the process is, and
Yeah.
so that it's clear from the beginning and everybody knows what is happening, is very important. And then to go back to chargebacks, I have been seeing that, especially you will find that chargebacks happen, especially in this price point of photography. If you are in the not zero, but 0 to 10K range, for instance,
Oh
you will
gosh.
find that group of clients, like, where it's a lot of money. 10K is not small money. We can't say that in any regard. But like, because that money is like that zero, I've always found that
That
price
price point.
range
Yeah.
specifically is where you will find chargebacks happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, somebody's not, nobody's been, yeah. It,
And I also feel like even with photographers, you may want to get to the point where you don't even take credit cards. And so
I want, Liz, did I or did I not tell you that?
yeah, so I don't take credit cards anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of this reason. I mean, I have never had a chargeback.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I will say is just like a rule of thumb. If
Mm-hmm.
you are charging more than 10K, you need to have an attorney on retainer.
Period.
And I really feel like that's like a good mark in the sand to say in
Mm-hmm.
your career of like, oh, here's now I need to add this to my cost of doing business. Because
Mm-hmm.
once you start getting with higher net worth
Wait.
individuals, though they have attorneys on
Mm-hmm.
retainer. And so they'll send my contract to an attorney and then come back with all these red lines. And I'm like, no, Kumbi, I'm gonna let you deal with this and like go back and forth with that attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is really important to kind of mitigate that. But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to these chargebacks, I really want you to think about just not taking credit card at all. And then
I agree.
if you do take credit card, the time frame in which you take credit card may be different to kind of mitigate the time that they have to be able to do a chargeback. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can't remember if I think it's 30 or 90 days out or something like that when it comes to being able to do a chargeback. I know some credit cards are even longer than that, but just be mindful of that and being able to put in your contract that what happens if a chargeback happens. Like if they decide to do a chargeback and it is, deemed to be, I would say fraudulent, like what happens at that point? And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that also may deter them from doing it if you put
Mm-hmm.
that in your contract as well.
I love a chargeback clause. I love it because it's something that's come up multiple times with my clients. So it's the reason why I now recommend completely that a chargeback clause comes. And exactly as Liz has said, it moves. Basically stating that in the event that a client makes a fraudulent chargeback and the credit card company finds in the favor of the client client understands and acknowledges that you will be able to make a demand and that it will be subject to an additional, like any chart, any coverage fees or anything like that that's going to need to be put in there for that fraudulent chargeback that has been made or unfounded chargeback. Because what people are doing is taking advantage of your goodwill and basically stating that, okay, like I've seen people do chargebacks after the wedding.
Yes.
After the wedding. So after you've provided services,
Yeah.
after you've done all this work, somebody comes and says that. And the thing that people don't talk about much is that chargebacks have consequences on your credit card processor as well. So like for instance, Stripe all of a sudden freezes your account or says that you can't charge certain things, and then it's now ricocheting and becoming a problem for your other clients.
Mhm.
So it's a big inconvenience and should be treated as a big inconvenience from the beginning.
Yeah, and then Stripe
yeah.
and all of these credit card processors now flag you.
That's right.
Now
Yeah.
you're a merchant that has chargebacks.
That has chargebacks.
And then you have to understand, majority of us, the volume in which we are doing credit card processing is low, but the amount that we are processing is high.
Right.
So we look like more of a risk to these card processors. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think consequence is really important. Like, and in terms of like with contracts, the contracts should have consequences, should have results, should have things that happen in the event of this. That's the whole point of them. So making sure that it's properly documented is a really it's a big part of your business, and it's a great way for you to protect yourself on the long run. I had a situation where I can say it now, where somebody got a dress and charged back the dress, well, wore the dress.
That is
So like,
insane. Like I'm speechless because I know that these things happen.
mhm.
And I know that there are people that are out there, especially when it comes to photographers that have done full weddings, family sessions, engagement sessions. Like, I don't like these photos, so I'm going to do a chargeback when you've already provided the work.
Mhm.
So I really think that this is super important. We just want to protect ourselves. Like, we are small businesses. And unfortunately, the thing that I feel like is hard to kind of stomach is like these card processors, PayPal, and all of these places. You should never be doing anything on PayPal when it comes to collecting money, because they are always going to side with the consumer. You should not be doing things on Venmo. You should not be having them Cash App you. You shouldn't even be having them Zelling you. No, you shouldn't be doing any of that. It should be a
Zelle. Listen.
Yes, it should be a wire, or, type of transfer, ACH. Those are the two things that you really should be doing,
Period.
because they're the easiest to kind of protect yourself, but also understanding like, hey, I'm getting into like the nitty gritty of payment, but it is important that if you are doing a card transaction, that you look at your state to be able to say if you can charge that 3% to them or not, because I think that
Look at my girl. Look
Yeah.
at my girl.
Yeah.
This is someone that is seasoned. This is
Yeah.
someone that's giving you the advice of a
I-
seasoned business owner.
Look, I've been around the block, y'all.
Tell 'em.
I've seen some things. I've been through some things, and that 3% in your card fee over time will eat you up. Especially even like 3% of $8,000. That's a lot of money when you're processing 20, 30 transactions a year and at that amount. So yeah, just bear that in mind. And I feel the one of the things I want to touch on too when it comes to rescheduling, I feel like over the last 2 years, I've had the most rescheduling and the most cancellations I've ever had in my career.
Let's talk about it.
I have never had, before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
wedding cancel or any reschedules. I've had one wedding cancel every year since COVID, and then I've had at least one or two reschedule every year since COVID.
But let's even talk about it. But isn't it even significantly more than COVID
Yes,
in the last 2 years?
yes,
That's what's so interesting.
it is. It is, because even with COVID, none of those weddings canceled. They just rescheduled.
Mm-hmm.
And so now after COVID, other circumstances have led them to cancel the wedding. And as unfortunate as it is, and I from a woman to standpoint of whatever happened, I'm sorry for you, sis. But like, I still got to pay my team. I still have to make payroll. This wedding was on my books. I couldn't rebook it. And so I've been paid in full for every single one of those weddings that got canceled. And, my team always tries to make things work and make things right for people. So like, we give them photo shoots or just do something just to make it, just to make the relationship better. Because I just feel like, man, they just paid me this amount of money and I get get that their wedding was canceled, so let me at least do headshots. That's what we do. But again, we don't have to do anything. And then we have them sign that this is not in conjunction. This is a separate shoot that we're doing complimentary for you just to protect ourselves. But yeah, like we've had weddings canceled and it's so unfortunate. And I really, hate that they have to reschedule. I hate all of the things that are happening. But when you reschedule and there's a certain time frame that if you reschedule between 60 days, 90 days, like that there's a fee attached to it. And that fee is what it is. Either you pay it or you cancel the contract. And so we've been blessed enough where people have paid it. But I do think that portion and figuring out what is reasonable for you to be charging for them to reschedule is definitely something that you need to take into consideration.
Another thing that I think I need to mention here is on Liz just jogged my memory regarding a certain client interaction that I had as well. One thing you also want to make sure is that both people getting married are parties to that agreement. Because in the event, because one of the things that just jogged my memory is that certain reschedulings or certain cancellations are due to being left at the quote unquote left at the altar, or somebody deciding that they don't want to get married anymore. Everybody needs to be responsible for that. It's not a situation where one party to the couple is now the one that has contracted to all these things and is the individual client in these agreements and is the person that's jilted, because then it gets really uncomfortable for the vendor, because it's like, okay, now you're forced to have to forget your payroll or forget all the financial responsibilities that you have due to the involvement of that, because you're now seen like maybe a bad person because you're enforcing those terms of your contract in terms of the reschedulings for someone that's been jilted. I know this is a very random scenario, but it's happened 3 times
Yeah,
in
no, it's
literally
not
2
random.
years. So
Yeah.
it's not random. So I'm saying, like, just ensure that the parties to the contract are clear. Ensure that the parties to the contract are at the very least 2 people, the 2 people that are having the event. So making sure that it's super clear so that you can enforce it. Because yes, horrible things happen, and horrible things, like, you can be that person that internally has decided how you want to handle certain horrible things happening and how you want that to be discussed in your contract. But you're also a business, so also evaluate and weigh how that works in the way that you handle scenarios, and make sure that it's properly documented in your contract.
Yes, Kumi, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and speaking
Thank
about
you for
this,
having me.
because this is honestly one of those topics that I feel that we need to really talk about more.
Mhm.
Things are changing. And like I
Mhm.
always go back to, like, guys, things before even I would say 2022 to how life is now in the wedding industry is completely different. So I
Mhm.
appreciate your time. And something else that Kumi didn't talk about. She has a way for you all to be able to get some of her closets. So
Oh,
let's
yes, I
talk about
do.
that.
Sorry. I am also the owner of Legally Set. Legally Set has ready-made attorney drafted contracts, ready for you to just purchase at probably a fraction of my hourly fee, which I think is just really brilliant. And I will definitely. And if you use the code Beyond, you'll get 20% off any of the contract purchases there. So it's literally, honestly, the best deal, especially for the photographer contracts. We have a photographer contract. I have an associate photographer contract, an assistant photographer contract. Listen, that is the best way for you to get Legally Set, like, ready to do business.
Yes, and you know what is so funny? Those were my contracts before. Like she knows. I mean, I couldn't always
Yeah.
afford Kumbi. Like, I love you, sis, but she's an
I know, girl.
like,
But I love
I
you.
had to do what I had to do, and those contracts got me through. So
No,
they're
those
definitely
contracts are
worth it.
solid. They've been drafted by 2 attorneys and then vetted by multiple attorneys just to make sure that they're solid for you to do work. So I think it's like, if you're looking to get started on the right foot, that's the best way to go.
Yes, and there's so many clauses that you just don't
Mm,
know that you need. And I know we mentioned a few here in this conversation, but like definitely take some time to look at that, because I think it's just protecting you, your family, your business, everything that you've worked hard for.
mhm.
Kumi, thank you so much for coming. Tell everybody
Thank
where
you
to
for
find
having
you
me.
on Instagram.
You can find me at Kumbi ESQ, or you can also follow Legally Set at LEGALLYSET to get, the good stuff. Also, I don't know when this is coming out, but like, when Black Friday's sale is
Mm-hmm.
incredible. So, like, you
It's
want
coming.
to be plugged in. It's
Yeah,
coming.
this will definitely drop before Black Friday. So
So
you
yeah,
guys heard that.
that is when you want to be plugged in, because it will be major.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, and you guys have a good week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.